You think you know the grim darkness of the far future. You've read the codices, watched the battle reports, and maybe even painted your own army of space marines or tyranids. But in the endless war of Warhammer 40,000, truth is a rare and precious thing, often buried beneath centuries of propaganda, half-remembered legends, and the lies we tell ourselves to survive. Today, we are going to peel back the layers of myth and misconception that have grown like fungus across the galaxy, and reveal the hidden truths behind 10 of the most persistent Warhammer 40K myths you still believe. Let's begin with a confession. The Imperium of Man, that vast, crumbling empire of 1,000,000 worlds, is built on myth. Its history is a tapestry of half-truths, its faith a weapon, its heroes more legend than flesh. And yet, even among the most devoted fans, certain stories are repeated so often that they become gospel. But what if I told you that some of the most obvious facts about the 41st millennium are, in fact, nothing more than comforting lies? What if the truth is stranger, darker, and more complicated than you ever imagined? Myth number 1. The Emperor is a god. This is perhaps the most widespread belief in the Imperium, and among Warhammer fans. The Emperor, the master of mankind, sits immobile upon the golden throne, his body sustained by ancient technology and the daily sacrifice of 1,000 souls. To the faithful, he is the God Emperor, the divine protector of humanity, the source of all hope in a universe of horror. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The Emperor never wanted to be worshipped as a god. In fact, he despised the very idea. During the Great Crusade, he forbade his sons, the Primarchs, from encouraging religious devotion. He saw faith as a tool of control, a relic of a more primitive age. The imperial truth, the guiding philosophy of the early Imperium, was aggressively atheistic, a rejection of superstition and dogma. The Emperor's transformation into a god was a tragic irony, a result of his own failure to understand the human need for faith. In the end, the very thing he tried to prevent became the foundation of his empire. The myth persists, not because it's true, but because the alternative, a universe without hope, without meaning, is too terrible to contemplate. Myth number 2. Space Marines are invincible. We've all seen the artwork, towering warriors in ceramide armor, shrugging off lasgun fire, cleaving through hordes of enemies with chainswords and bolters. The Adeptus Astartes are the angels of death, the Emperor's chosen, the ultimate soldiers. But the myth of their invincibility is just that, a myth. Space Marines are powerful, yes, but they are not immortal. They die in droves, cut down by Xenos, heretics, and the endless attrition of war. For every legendary hero who survives 1,000 battles, there are 100 nameless brothers who fall in the mud, their sacrifice forgotten. The truth is, the Imperium can afford to lose Space Marines, because it has to. The galaxy is too vast, the threats too numerous, for even the greatest warriors to survive forever. The myth of invincibility is a comfort, a way to make sense of the endless losses. But if you look closer, you'll see the cracks in the armor, the scars beneath the surface. Myth number 3. The Horus Heresy was a simple civil war. Ask any fan about the Horus Heresy, and you'll hear the same story. Horus, the favored son, turned against the Emperor, plunging the galaxy into a war that shattered the Imperium and doomed humanity to 10,000 years of darkness. But the reality is far more complex. The heresy was not a single, unified conflict, but 1,000 wars fought for 1,000 reasons. Some Primarchs turned out of pride, others out of fear, still others because they saw no other choice. The seeds of rebellion were sown long before Horus fell, in the rivalries and resentments that festered among the Emperor's sons. And even after the Siege of Terror, the wounds of the heresy never truly healed. The myth of a simple, black-and-white conflict is comforting, but the truth is a tangled web of betrayal, regret, and lost potential. Myth number 4. The Eldar are a dying race. This one is tricky, because it's both true and false. The Eldar, once the rulers of the galaxy, are a shadow of their former glory. Their empire shattered, their gods slain, their souls hunted by the monstrous Slaanesh. But the myth of inevitable extinction is just that, a myth. The Eldar are survivors. They have adapted, evolved, and found new ways to endure. The craftworlds drift through the void, preserving ancient traditions. The Dark Eldar thrive in the twisted labyrinth of Comora, feeding on pain and excess. The Harlequins dance between worlds, keeping the old stories alive. Even the mysterious Inari offer a glimmer of hope, a chance to cheat death itself. The Eldar may be dying, but they are not dead. Their story is not over, and anyone who tells you otherwise is selling you a lie. Myth number 5. The orcs are mindless brutes. It's easy to laugh at the orcs, their crude weapons, their ramshackle vehicles, their endless appetite for violence. But beneath the green skin and bad teeth lies a cunning intelligence. Orcs are not stupid. They are simply different. Their society is built on strength, their technology on instinct and improvisation. Orc science may look like madness, but it works, because orcs believe it works. Their psychic gestalt shapes reality itself, turning scrap into starships, squigs into war machines. The myth of orcish stupidity is a human prejudice, a way to dismiss a threat that cannot be understood. But underestimate the orcs at your peril. They are the most successful species in the galaxy, and they are always learning, always adapting, always ready for the next fight. Myth number 6. The Adeptus Mechanicus understands its own technology. In the Imperium, the Adeptus Mechanicus are revered as the keepers of knowledge, the priests of the machine god, the only ones who can maintain the ancient wonders that keep humanity alive. Their red-robed tech priests chant Benharic prayers, anoint sacred engines with unguents, and recite litanies before pressing a single button. To the uninitiated, it seems as if the Mechanicus possesses a mastery of science so advanced it borders on magic. But here's the uncomfortable truth. The Adeptus Mechanicus does not truly understand most of the technology it maintains. The STC templates, the lost blueprints of the dark age of technology, are mostly gone. What remains is a patchwork of ritual, rote memorization, and desperate improvisation. When a plasma reactor fails, a tech priest may spend hours in prayer, hoping the machine spirit will forgive whatever sin has caused the malfunction. Sometimes, the repair is little more than a guess, a hopeful recitation of ancient words. The myth of mastery is a mask, hiding the reality that the Mechanicus is as much a cult as a scientific institution. They preserve, they tinker, they worship, but true innovation is rare, and true understanding even rarer. The galaxy runs on the fumes of forgotten genius, and the Mechanicus is just as lost as the rest of us. Myth number 7. Chaos is pure evil. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is no shortage of monsters. The diamonds of the warp, the traitor legions, the cultists who whisper blasphemies in the shadows. These are the enemies of mankind, the embodiment of corruption and madness. It's easy, even comforting, to see chaos as a force of pure evil, a cosmic cancer to be cut out and destroyed. But the truth is more complicated. Chaos is not just evil. It is change, desire, ambition, and fear. The four great gods, Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, and Slaanesh, are reflections of the emotions and drives that shape all sentient life. Khorne is not just bloodshed, but the urge to overcome, to prove oneself. Tzeentch is not just deception, but hope, curiosity, and the hunger for knowledge. Nurgle is not just decay, but endurance, acceptance, and the comfort found in despair. Slaanesh is not just excess, but the pursuit of perfection, the longing for beauty and sensation. Chaos is a mirror, showing us the darkest parts of ourselves, but also the brightest. The myth of pure evil is a simplification, a way to make the enemy less human, less understandable. But in the end, chaos is us, magnified and unleashed. Myth number 8. The Tau are the good guys. Every story needs a contrast, a glimmer of hope in the darkness. For many, the Tau Empire fills that role, a young, dynamic civilization, guided by the philosophy of the greater good. They offer unity, progress, and a vision of the future that seems almost utopian compared to the decaying Imperium. But the myth of the good Tau is just that, a myth. The Tau are expansionists, conquerors, and manipulators. Their society is rigidly stratified, with the Ethereos ruling from behind the scenes. Dissent is not tolerated. Those who question the greater good are re-educated or quietly removed. The Tau's enlightened approach to other species often involves forced assimilation, cultural erasure, or outright extermination. Their technology is advanced, their propaganda slick, but beneath the surface lies the same hunger for power that drives every empire. The myth of the benevolent Tau is a comforting illusion, a way to imagine that there is a right side in a universe where morality is always a casualty of war. Myth number 9. The Necrons are mindless machines. Once, the Necrons were the stuff of nightmares, silent, relentless, soulless automatons rising from ancient tombs to harvest the living. For years, the myth persisted. Necrons are nothing but machines. They were subsumed by the cold logic of their programming. But the truth is far stranger. The Necrons were once a living race, the Necronti, who traded their flesh for immortality and paid a terrible price. Many Necrons retain echoes of their former selves, memories, ambitions, even personalities. The Silent King, Sarek, is a ruler haunted by regret. The Cryptex are mad scientists, obsessed with forbidden knowledge. The Overlords scheme and plot, their dynasties locked in endless games of power. Some Necrons are little more than automatons, their minds eroded by millennia of sleep. But others are as cunning, as proud, and as flawed as any living being. The myth of the mindless machine is a relic of ignorance, a way to make the enemy less frightening. But the Necrons are not just machines, they are the ghosts of a dead civilization, and their motives are as complex as any humans. Myth number 10. The Imperium is doomed. It's easy to look at the state of the Imperium and see only decline. Worlds lost to chaos, Xeno's empires rising, the Astronomicon flickering, the Emperor's body decaying on the Golden Throne. The myth of inevitable doom is seductive, a way to make sense of the endless suffering, to find meaning in the chaos. But the truth is, the Imperium endures. It has survived 10,000 years of war, rebellion, and catastrophe. It has adapted, evolved, and found new ways to survive. The Primarchs have returned, new heroes have risen, and even the darkest night cannot last forever. The myth of doom is a story we tell ourselves to explain the pain, but the reality is more complicated. The Imperium is not dead, it is changing. And in that change, there is always the possibility of something new. So, as we peel back the layers of myth and legend, what do we find? A universe that is stranger, darker, and more fascinating than any single story can capture. The myths we believe are not just mistakes, they are shields, comforts, and sometimes warnings. But if you want to truly understand the grim darkness of the far future, you must be willing to question everything, even the stories you hold most dear. But perhaps the greatest myth of all is that the truth can ever be fully known. In the 41st millennium, knowledge is a weapon, and ignorance is often a shield. The Imperium survives not because it understands the universe, but because it refuses to be destroyed by it. Every myth, every legend, every half-remembered tale serves a purpose, sometimes to inspire, sometimes to terrify, sometimes simply to keep hope alive in a galaxy that offers precious little of it. Let's return to the myth of the Emperor as a god. It's easy to see why this belief took root. The Emperor's psychic might is unmatched, his vision for humanity grander than any before or since. But the tragedy is that his divinity is a lie told out of necessity. The ecclesiarchy, the church that now rules in his name, enforces this faith with fire and sword. Heresy is punished with death, and doubt is a luxury few can afford. Yet, in the quiet corners of the galaxy, there are those who remember the old ways, the imperial truth, the dream of a rational, united humanity. They are hunted, silenced, erased from history. But their memory lingers, a whisper of what might have been. The myth persists because it must. Without it, the Imperium would fracture, its people lost in a sea of fear and uncertainty. Sometimes, a comforting lie is all that stands between survival and oblivion. Contrast this with the myth of space marine invincibility. The Astartes are symbols, living legends, the embodiment of the Emperor's wrath. But for every hero who stands atop a mountain of corpses, there are 100 who die in silence, their names lost to time. The myth endures because it inspires. It gives hope to the hopeless, courage to the fearful. But it also demands a terrible price. Space Marines are not allowed to be human. They cannot grieve, cannot falter, cannot fail. To admit weakness is to betray the myth, and so they carry their burdens in silence, their pain hidden behind masks of ceramite and discipline. The truth is, the greatest strength of the Astartes is not their armor or their weapons, but their willingness to sacrifice everything for a cause they know is flawed. They are not gods, they are men, and that is what makes their heroism real. The Horus Heresy, too, is a myth that serves many masters. For the Imperium, it is a cautionary tale, a warning against pride and ambition. For the traitor legions, it is a story of betrayal and lost glory. For the rest of the galaxy, it is a reminder that even the greatest can fall. The truth is messier, more painful. The heresy was not a single event, but a slow unraveling, a tragedy played out over decades. Its wounds still bleed, its lessons still unlearned. The myth simplifies, sanitizes, makes the horror bearable. But the truth is always waiting, just beneath the surface, for those brave enough to look. The Eldar's supposed extinction is another myth that hides a deeper reality. The galaxy is ancient. and the Eldar have seen more than any other race. They have lost much, yes, but they have also endured. Their adaptability, their resilience, their refusal to surrender to despair, these are the qualities that have allowed them to survive when all logic says they should be gone. The myth of their doom is a human projection, a way to make sense of a people who refuse to fit into neat categories. The Eldar are not dying, they are changing, and in that change lies both danger and hope. Orcs, too, are victims of myth. Their violence, their chaos, their apparent stupidity, all of these are masks, ways to make them less threatening, less real. But the orcs are the ultimate survivors. Their society is a paradox, brutal yet stable, chaotic yet enduring. They are the only race in the galaxy that truly enjoys war, that finds meaning in conflict. The myth of their mindlessness is a comfort, a way to dismiss a threat that cannot be reasoned with. But the truth is, the orcs are the most honest species in the galaxy. They want to fight, and so they do. There is a purity in their violence, a simplicity that is both terrifying and admirable. The Adeptus Mechanicus, with its rituals and dogmas, is another example of myth-serving necessity. The tech priests do not understand the machines they worship, but they keep them running through faith and tradition. In a universe where knowledge is lost faster than it can be rediscovered, ritual becomes a form of survival. The myth of mastery is a shield against the terror of ignorance. But every now and then, a spark of true genius flares, a new invention, a rediscovered secret. These moments are rare, but they remind us that even in the darkness, the light of curiosity still burns, and what of chaos? The myth of pure evil is perhaps the most dangerous of all. It allows the Imperium to justify any atrocity, any cruelty, in the name of survival. If chaos is nothing but darkness, then anything done to oppose it is righteous. But chaos is not a foreign invader. It is the shadow cast by every sentient mind. The gods of the warp are born from the hopes, fears, and desires of mortals. To fight chaos is to fight oneself, to wage war against the very things that make us alive. The myth of evil is a weapon, wielded by those who would rather destroy than understand. But the truth is, chaos is a part of us, and to deny it is to deny our own nature. The real danger is not in the existence of chaos, but in our refusal to face the darkness within. The Tau, so often painted as the galaxy's last hope, are themselves prisoners of myth. Their propaganda is as sophisticated as any in the Imperium, their vision of the greater good as seductive as any promise of salvation. But beneath the surface lies a society as rigid, as controlling, as any the galaxy has ever known. The ethereals rule with an iron hand, dissent is crushed, and the price of unity is the loss of individuality. The myth of the good Tau is a story told to outsiders, a mask worn to hide the machinery of empire. But for those who look closer, the cracks are obvious. The Tau are not saviors, they are conquerors, and their vision of the future is as uncompromising as any the galaxy has seen. The Necrons, too, are more than the sum of their myths. Once, they were the Necronti, a people cursed by short lives and endless suffering. Their quest for immortality led them to betray their own souls, to become machines in the service of the Cetan. But even in their cold, metallic shells, the Necrons remember. Some are little more than automatons, their minds eroded by millennia of sleep. But others are haunted by memories, driven by ambition, regret, or pride. The myth of the mindless machine is a comfort, a way to make the enemy less frightening. But the truth is, the Necrons are as complex, as tragic, as any living race. Their motives are not simple, their goals not always clear. They are the ghosts of a dead civilization, and their story is far from over. And then there is the myth of the Imperium's doom. It is easy to see only decline, only decay. The galaxy is a place of endless war, endless suffering. But the Imperium endures. It has survived catastrophes that would have destroyed any lesser civilization. It has adapted, evolved, and found new ways to survive. The return of the Primarchs, the rise of new heroes, the flickering hope that somewhere, somehow, things might get better. These are the threads that keep the tapestry from unraveling. The myth of doom is a story we tell ourselves to explain the pain, but the reality is more complicated. The Imperium is not dead, it is changing. And in that change, there is always the possibility of something new. So why do these myths persist? Why do we cling to stories that are, at best, half-truths? The answer is simple: we need them. In a universe as vast and hostile as Warhammer 40,000, myth is a survival mechanism. It gives us something to believe in, something to fight for, something to hold on to when everything else is lost. Myths are not just lies. They are the scaffolding of civilization, the glue that holds society together. Without them, the galaxy would be a colder, darker place. But there is a danger in myth, too. When we mistake stories for reality, when we refuse to question, to doubt, to seek the truth, we become prisoners of our own imagination. The greatest heroes of the 41st millennium are not those who blindly follow, but those who dare to ask, what if? What if the Emperor is not a god? What if the Space Marines are not invincible? What if the Imperium is not doomed? These questions are dangerous, but they are also necessary. They are the spark that keeps the fire of hope alive. In the end, the myths of Warhammer 40,000 are as much about us as they are about the galaxy. They reflect our fears, our hopes, our need for meaning in a universe that offers none. They are the stories we tell to make sense of the darkness, to find light in the void. And as long as there are those willing to question, to doubt, to seek the truth, the myths will never have the final word. But let's not pretend that myth is always a comfort. Sometimes, it is a weapon. In the Imperium, myth is enforced at gunpoint. The ecclesiarchy burns heretics, the Inquisition roots out dangerous knowledge, and the Adeptus Arbites keep the peace with shock maws and riot shields. To question the official story is to invite suspicion, exile, or death. The myth of the Emperor's divinity is not just a belief, it is law, and to break it is to risk everything. Yet, in the shadows, there are always those who remember. Rogue scholars, hidden cults, and even some Space Marines whisper forbidden truths. They know that the line between faith and fanaticism is razor thin, and that the greatest danger to the Imperium may not come from without, but from within. Contrast this with the Orcs, whose myths are not enforced but lived. For an Orc, belief is reality. If enough Orcs think something works, it does. Their technology, their society, even their biology are shaped by collective will. There are no heretics among the Orcs, no inquisitors, no burning at the stake. Their myths are fluid, ever-changing, as chaotic as the greenskins themselves. And yet, in their own way, the Orcs are more honest than any other race. They do not pretend to understand the universe, they simply enjoy it, reveling in the endless cycle of war and rebirth. Their myths are not chains, but wings. The Eldar, on the other hand, are prisoners of their own history. Their myths are ancient, woven into the very fabric of their souls. Every craft world, every exodite world, every Harlequin troop carries the weight of 1,000,000 years of memory. The fall of the Eldar, the birth of Slaanesh, the loss of their gods, these are not just stories, but wounds that never heal. The myth of inevitable extinction is a shadow that haunts every Eldar, a prophecy they cannot escape. And yet, even in the face of doom, they endure. Their myths are both curse and comfort, a reminder of what was lost and what might still be saved. The Adeptus Mechanicus, too, is shaped by myth. Their rituals, their prayers, their fear of innovation, all are products of a worldview that sees knowledge as both sacred and dangerous. The machine god is not just a metaphor. For the tech priests, it is a living reality, a presence that must be appeased. The myth of mastery is a shield against the terror of ignorance, but it is also a prison. True innovation is rare, and those who dare to question the old ways are often branded heretics. Yet, every now and then, a Magos or an engineer rediscovers a lost secret, and the myth is forced to adapt. The dance between tradition and progress is never-ending, and the line between faith and folly is always blurred. And what of the Necrons? Their myths are older than any other, carved into the walls of tomb worlds and whispered by the Silent King. They remember a time before the stars, before the warp, before the gods themselves. Their myths are stories of betrayal, of sacrifice, of a bargain that cost them their souls. Some Necrons cling to these stories, using them to justify their actions, to find meaning in an existence that is otherwise empty. Others reject them, seeking new purpose in a galaxy that has moved on. The myth of the mindless machine is a human invention, a way to make the Necrons less frightening. But the truth is, their myths are as complex, as tragic, as any in the galaxy. The Tau, for all their talk of the greater good, are not immune to myth. Their society is built on the idea of progress, of unity, of a future that is always just out of reach. But beneath the surface lies a web of secrets, of lies told for the sake of harmony. The Ethereals are the keepers of these myths, shaping the narrative to suit their needs. Dissent is not tolerated, and those who question the story are quietly removed. The myth of the good Tao is a mask, a way to hide the machinery of control. But even among the Tao, there are those who wonder if the price of unity is too high yet. For all the power of myth, there are always cracks in the facade. In the Imperium, these cracks appear as forbidden texts, hidden libraries, and the whispered words of those who remember a different truth. The Inquisition may burn books and silence dissenters, but ideas are harder to kill than people. Somewhere, a scholar deciphers a fragment of an ancient STC, a remembrancer paints a mural that hints at forgotten glories, or a child dreams of a world where the emperor walks among his people, not as a god, but as a father. These small acts of rebellion are seeds, waiting for the right moment to grow. The myth of the unchanging Imperium is just that, a myth. Change is inevitable, even in a galaxy that fears it above all else. Among the Space Marines, too, myth is both shield and shackle. The Codex Astartes, written by Roboute Guilliman, is treated as holy writ by some chapters, while others see it as a guideline, to be bent or broken as necessity demands. The myth of the perfect warrior is a burden every Astartes must bear. They are taught to suppress doubt, to hide fear, to be more than human. But beneath the armor, they are still men, men who grieve, who question, who sometimes fail. The greatest heroes are not those who never falter, but those who rise again, who find meaning in sacrifice. The myth of invincibility is a comfort to the Imperium, but it is a heavy weight for those who must live up to it. The Horus Heresy, that great cataclysm, is a story told and retold, each version shaped by the teller's needs. For the Loyalists, it is a tale of betrayal and redemption. For the traitors, it is a tragedy, a warning against pride and ambition. For the rest of the galaxy, it is a distant thunder, a reminder that even gods can fall. The truth is lost in the fog of war, buried beneath layers of propaganda and regret. The myth endures because it must, because the alternative is to admit that the galaxy was broken not by monsters, but by men. The Eldar, with their endless memory, are both blessed and cursed by myth. Every song, every dance, every ritual is a reminder of what was lost. The Harlequins, keepers of the Black Library, dance the old stories, ensuring that nothing is truly forgotten. But memory is a double-edged sword. The myth of inevitable extinction can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, a reason to surrender rather than fight. Yet, even in the darkest times, there are those who refuse to accept the end. The Inari, followers of Inead, seek a new path, a way to cheat death itself. Their myth is one of hope, a reminder that even in a dying race, the spark of life endures. Orcs, for all their simplicity, are perhaps the most myth-resistant race in the galaxy. Their beliefs shape reality, their stories become truth. There is no dogma, no orthodoxy, only the endless cycle of war and laughter. For an orc, the only myth that matters is the one that gets you to the next fight. In their own way, they are the freest beings in the galaxy, unburdened by history, untroubled by doubt. The Adeptus Mechanicus, trapped between faith and reason, are both jailers and prisoners of myth. Their rituals keep the machines running, but they also stifle innovation. The myth of the machine god is a comfort, but it is also a chain. Yet, in the dark corners of Mars and beyond, there are always those who question, who seek forbidden knowledge, who dream of a new golden age. The myth endures, but it is never absolute. But what happens when myth and reality collide? Sometimes, the result is tragedy. Sometimes, it is revolution. In the Imperium, the rare moments when truth breaks through the armor of myth are often marked by violence and upheaval. The Age of Apostasy, the rise of the Primarchs, the opening of the Great Rift, each of these events shattered old certainties and forced the galaxy to confront uncomfortable truths. The myth of stability, of eternal order, is always one crisis away from collapse. Yet, even in the aftermath, new myths arise to fill the void, to explain the chaos, to give meaning to the suffering. For the Space Marines, the return of Roboute Guilliman was both a miracle and a challenge. The myth of the lost Primarchs had become a story of mourning, a way to explain the absence of heroes. When Guilliman returned, alive and changed, the myth had to adapt. Some chapters embraced him as a living legend, others saw him as a threat to their autonomy. The truth, that Guilliman is both savior and stranger, a relic of a different age, was harder to accept. The myth of the perfect leader is seductive, but reality is always more complicated. The Eldar, too, have seen their myths tested. The rise of the Inari, the awakening of Inead, the shifting alliances with other races, each of these events has forced the Eldar to question the stories they have told for millennia. The myth of inevitable extinction is powerful, but it is not destiny. The future is unwritten, and those who dare to challenge the old ways may yet find a new path. For the Eldar, as for all races, myth is both a guide and a prison. Orcs, in their own way, are immune to the dangers of myth. Their reality is shaped by belief, and so every story is true if enough orcs believe it. This makes them unpredictable, dangerous, and strangely resilient. The myth of the unstoppable War is not just a story, it is a weapon, a force of nature. For the orcs, the line between myth and reality is not just blurred, it is irrelevant. The Adeptus Mechanicus faces its own crises of faith. When a new technology is discovered, when a machine spirit refuses to obey, when a tech priest dares to innovate, the myth of the unchanging order is threatened. Sometimes, the result is excommunication, or even war. But sometimes, the myth adapts, incorporating the new into the old, finding a way to survive. The dance between tradition and progress is never-ending, and the myths of the Mechanicus are always evolving. The Necrons, awakening from their long sleep, find a galaxy that no longer remembers their true story. The myth of the mindless machine is a shield for the living, a way to make the Necrons less terrifying. But as the Silent King returns, as dynasties rise and fall, the truth of the Necrons' past begins to emerge. Their myths are not just stories, they are warnings, lessons written in the language of regret. The Tau, for all their optimism, are not immune to the dangers of myth. The greater good is a powerful idea, but it is also a tool of control. When dissent arises, when the ethereal's authority is questioned, the myth is defended with all the tools of the state. Yet, even among the Tau, there are those who wonder if the price of unity is too high. The myth endures, but the cracks are beginning to show, yet, for all the turmoil, myth remains the glue that binds the galaxy together. In the Imperium, the myth of the Emperor's divinity is the foundation of society. It justifies the sacrifices, the suffering, the endless war. Without it, the Imperium would fracture, torn apart by doubt and fear. The ecclesiarchy knows this, and so the myth is protected at all costs. Cathedrals rise on every world, hymns echo through the void, and the faithful march to war with the Emperor's name on their lips. The myth is not just a story, it is a weapon, a shield, a reason to endure. For the Space Marines, myth is both a burden and a blessing. They are the Emperor's angels, the living embodiment of his will. Their deeds are sung in 1,000 battle hymns, their sacrifices remembered in the halls of honor. But the myth demands perfection, and perfection is impossible. Every failure, every doubt, every moment of weakness is a betrayal of the legend. Some Astartes break under the weight, others find strength in the struggle. The greatest heroes are not those who never fall, but those who rise again, who find meaning in the fight. The myth endures because it must, because without it, the galaxy would be a colder, darker place. The Eldar, haunted by memory, use myth as both shield and sword. Their stories are warnings, lessons carved into the soul of their people. The fall, the birth of Slaanesh, the loss of the gods, these are not just tales, but scars. Yet, even in the face of extinction, the Eldar find hope in myth. The Harlequins dance the old stories, the Inari seek a new future, and every craftworld carries the memory of what was lost. The myth of inevitable doom is powerful, but it is not destiny. The future is unwritten, and those who dare to challenge the old ways may yet find a new path. Orcs, in their chaotic wisdom, are perhaps the only race truly free from the tyranny of myth. For them, belief is reality, and every story is true if enough orcs believe it. Their myths are not chains, but engines of creation. The Wa is both legend and fact, a force of nature that shapes the galaxy. For the orcs, the line between myth and reality is not just blurred, it is irrelevant. They are the ultimate survivors, the eternal children of war. The Adeptus Mechanicus, caught between faith and reason, uses myth to survive in a universe that punishes curiosity. Their rituals keep the machines running, their prayers ward off the unknown. The myth of the machine god is both comfort and constraint, a way to make sense of a world where knowledge is always slipping away. Yet, even among the tech priests, there are those who question, who seek forbidden truths, who dream of a new golden age. The myth endures, but it is never absolute. The Necrons, awakening to a galaxy that has forgotten their true story, use myth as a weapon. Their legends are warnings, lessons written in the language of regret. The myth of the mindless machine is a shield for the living, but for the Necrons, it is a prison. As the Silent King returns, as dynasties rise and fall, the truth of the Necrons' past begins to emerge. Their myths are not just stories, they are the keys to understanding a tragedy that spans the stars. The Tau, for all their optimism, are not immune to the dangers of myth. The greater good is a powerful idea, but it is also a tool of control. When dissent arises, when the ethereal's authority is questioned, the myth is defended with all the tools of the state. Yet, even among the Tau, there are those who wonder if the price of unity is too high. The myth endures, but the cracks are beginning to show. But what does all this mean for those who live and die in the shadow of these myths? For the average citizen of the Imperium, myth is both a comfort and a curse. It explains the unexplainable, gives meaning to suffering, and offers hope in a universe that seems designed to crush it. The stories of the Emperor's miracles, the heroism of the Space Marines, the evil of the Xenos and the heretic, these are the tales that fill the minds of children and the prayers of the dying. Yet, these same myths justify the cruelty of the state, the endless wars, the sacrifices demanded by the ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition. To question is to risk everything, and so most choose to believe, or at least to pretend. For the soldiers of the Astra Militarum, myth is a weapon as vital as any last gun. Commissars recite the legends of Saint Sabbat, of Macarius, of Creed and Yarrick, to inspire courage in the face of certain death. The myth of the Emperor's protection is a shield against fear, a reason to charge into the guns of the enemy. But every veteran knows the truth. Faith alone will not stop a bolt around, and the Emperor's miracles are rare. The myth endures because it must, because without it, the will to fight would falter. Among the Space Marines, myth is a test. Every chapter has its own legends, its own heroes, its own sacred relics. The Blood Angels revere Sanguinius, the Ultramarines venerate Guilliman, the Dark Angels guard secrets darker than any myth. These stories bind the chapters together, give meaning to their sacrifices, and justify their existence. But they also divide, creating rivalries, feuds, and sometimes even war. The myth of unity is powerful, but it is always fragile. The Eldar, for all their wisdom, are not immune to the dangers of myth. Their stories are warnings, but also chains. The fear of Slaanesh, the memory of the fall, the prophecy of extinction, these are burdens every Eldar must bear. Yet, even in the darkest times, there are those who dare to hope, who seek a new path. The Inari, the Harlequins, the Exodites, all are searching for a way to break the cycle, to write a new myth for a new age. Orcs, in their simplicity, are perhaps the happiest race in the galaxy. Their myths are not burdens, but joys. Every story is a reason to fight, to laugh, to live. For an Orc, the only truth that matters is the next war, the next battle, the next victory. Their myths are not chains, but engines of creation. The Adeptus Mechanicus, for all their knowledge, are prisoners of their own stories. The myth of the machine god, the rituals of maintenance, the fear of innovation, these are the walls of their prison. Yet, even among the tech priests, there are those who dream of more, who seek the lost secrets of the past, who hope for a new golden age. The Necrons, awakening to a galaxy that has forgotten them, are haunted by their own myths. The Silent King, the Cetan, the betrayal of the Necronty, these are the stories that shape their actions, their ambitions, their regrets. The myth of the mindless machine is a lie, but it is a lie that has power. The Tau, for all their hope, are not immune to the dangers of myth. The greater good is a powerful idea, but it is also a tool of control. When dissent arises, when the ethereal's authority is questioned, the myth is defended with all the tools of the state. Yet, even among the Tau, there are those who wonder if the price of unity is too high. In the end, myth is both a blessing and a curse. It gives meaning, but it also takes it away. It inspires, but it also imprisons. The greatest challenge in the galaxy is not to believe, but to question, to seek the truth behind the story, to find hope in the darkness, to write a new myth for a new age. But perhaps the most important lesson is that myths are not static. They change, evolve, and adapt to the needs of those who tell them. In the Imperium, the myth of the Emperor has shifted over millennia, from visionary leader, to god, to distant, silent judge. Each transformation reflects the fears and hopes of humanity at that moment in history. When the galaxy was united, the Emperor was a father. When it was torn apart, he became a god. Now, as the darkness deepens, he is both savior and executioner, a symbol of hope and terror in equal measure. For the Space Marines, the myths of their origins are constantly rewritten. The story of the Primarchs, the legends of the first founding, the tales of lost legions and secret wars, these are not fixed truths, but living stories, shaped by the needs of each chapter. Some embrace the Codex Astartes as holy writ, others see it as a relic of a bygone age. The myth of the perfect warrior is always just out of reach, a goal that inspires even as it torments. The Eldar, too, are masters of myth-making. Their stories are not just memories, but tools for survival. The Harlequins weave the old tales into new dances, ensuring that nothing is ever truly forgotten. The Inari seek to create a new myth, one that offers hope in the face of extinction. For the Eldar, myth is both shield and sword, a way to remember the past and shape the future. Orcs, in their chaotic wisdom, are the ultimate myth-makers. Every story is true, if enough orcs believe it. Their legends are not just tales, but weapons, tools for survival in a galaxy that offers no mercy. The Wa is both myth and reality, a force of nature that shapes the fate of worlds. For the Orcs, the line between story and truth is not just blurred, it is irrelevant. The Adeptus Mechanicus, for all their reverence for the past, are also creators of myth. Every new discovery, every recovered STC, every innovation is woven into the tapestry of the machine god. The myth of the unchanging order is a comfort, but it is also a lie. The Mechanicus survives because it adapts, because it finds new ways to keep the machines running, even as the old knowledge fades. The Necrons, awakening to a galaxy that has forgotten their true story, are forced to confront the power of myth. The legends of the Silent King, the betrayal of the Citan, the promise of immortality, these are not just memories, but chains. Yet, as the dynasties rise and fall, new stories are written, new myths are born. The Necrons are not just prisoners of the past, they are authors of the future. The Tau, for all their optimism, are learning the dangers of myth. The greater good is a powerful idea, but it is also a tool of control. As the empire expands, as new challenges arise, the myth must adapt or die. Among the Tau, there are those who question, who doubt, who seek a new path. The myth endures, but it is always changing. In the end, the myths of Warhammer 40,000 are as much about us as they are about the galaxy. They reflect our fears, our hopes, our need for meaning in a universe that offers none. They are the stories we tell to make sense of the darkness, to find light in the void. And as long as there are those willing to question, to doubt, to seek the truth, the myths will never have the final word. So, what does it mean to live in a universe built on myth? For some, it is a source of strength. The guardsman who faces the horrors of the front lines with a prayer to the Emperor on his lips draws courage from the stories he's been told since childhood. The tech priest who anoints a reactor with sacred oils believes, truly believes, that the machine spirit will respond to his devotion. The Eldar who sings the songs of the fall does so not just to remember, but to warn, to teach, to keep the past alive in the hope that it will not be repeated. Even the Orc, who shouts the name of a legendary war boss before charging into battle, is participating in a living myth, one that shapes reality itself. But for others, myth is a prison. The Inquisitor who burns a world to root out heresy is trapped by the myth of purity, unable to see the humanity in those he condemns. The Space Marine who cannot admit fear or doubt is crushed beneath the weight of impossible expectations. The Tau Fire Warrior who questions the greater good risks exile, re-education, or worse. The Necron Overlord who clings to ancient grudges is haunted by stories that no longer serve any purpose. For these souls, myth is not a comfort, but a chain. Yet, even in the darkest corners of the galaxy, there are those who dare to question. The Remembrancer who paints forbidden truths, the rogue psyker who seeks knowledge in the Black Library, the renegade tech priest who dreams of a new golden age, these are the sparks that keep the fire of hope alive. They know that myths are not sacred, but tools. They can be used to inspire, to control, to justify, but also to liberate. The greatest revolutions in history have always begun with a question. What if the story we've been told is not the whole truth? Consider the myth of the Emperor's divinity. For most, it is an article of faith, a reason to endure the unendurable. But for a few, it is a question mark, a mystery to be solved. What if the Emperor was never a god? What if his true legacy is not the Imperium, but the idea that humanity can shape its own destiny? These are dangerous thoughts, but they are also seeds, seeds that may one day grow into something new. Or look at the myth of Space Marine invincibility. It inspires courage, but it also demands silence. How many heroes have died because they could not admit weakness, could not ask for help, could not be human? The chapters that survive are those that adapt, that allow their warriors to grieve, to doubt, to heal. The myth is powerful, but it is not absolute. The Eldar, for all their wisdom, are learning that myths can be rewritten. The rise of the Inari, the hope of Inead, the possibility of a new future. These are stories that challenge the old ways, that offer a path beyond extinction. The Harlequins, keepers of the old tales, are also the first to embrace the new. For the Eldar, as for all races, survival depends on the ability to change. Even the Orcs, in their chaotic way, understand the power of myth. Every story is true, if enough Orcs believe it. Their reality is shaped by imagination, by belief, by the endless cycle of war and laughter. For them, myth is not a prison, but a playground. The Adeptus Mechanicus, for all their reverence for the past, are also creators of myth. Every new discovery, every recovered STC, every innovation is woven into the tapestry of the machine god. The myth of the unchanging order is a comfort, but it is also a lie. The Mechanicus survives because it adapts, because it finds new ways to keep the machines running, even as the old knowledge fades. The Necrons, awakening to a galaxy that has forgotten their true story, are forced to confront the power of myth. The legends of the Silent King, the betrayal of the Citan, the promise of immortality, these are not just memories, but chains. Yet, as the dynasties rise and fall, new stories are written, new myths are born. The Necrons are not just prisoners of the past, they are authors of the future. The Tau, for all their optimism, are learning the dangers of myth. The greater good is a powerful idea, but it is also a tool of control. As the empire expands, as new challenges arise, the myth must adapt or die. Among the Tau, there are those who question, who doubt, who seek a new path. The myth endures, but it is always changing, and so, in the endless night of the 41st millennium, the struggle between myth and truth continues. Every world, every faction, every soul is caught in the web of stories that define their existence. Some cling to the old legends, finding comfort in the familiar. Others rebel, seeking new narratives, new meanings, new ways to survive. The galaxy is a battlefield not just of armies, but of ideas, of myths that inspire, control, and sometimes destroy. For the Imperium, the greatest danger is not the Xenos or the heretic, but the loss of faith. The ecclesiarchy knows this, and so the myth of the Emperor is guarded more fiercely than any fortress. Cathedrals rise on every world, the words of the Lectitio Divinitatis are carved into the very stones of cities, and the faithful march to war with hymns on their lips. Yet, beneath the surface, doubt festers. The administratum is riddled with corruption, the Inquisition is divided by secret wars, and the common people suffer in silence. The myth endures, but it is always under siege. Among the Space Marines, the burden of myth is both a source of strength and a cause of tragedy. The legends of the Primarchs, the tales of the first founding, the stories of lost heroes, these are the foundations of every chapter. But the reality is harsher. Space Marines die, sometimes in vain. Chapters are lost, sometimes to pride, sometimes to heresy. The myth of invincibility is a shield, but it is also a mask, hiding the pain and doubt that every warrior carries. The chapters that survive are those that find a balance, that honor the myth but do not become its slaves. The Eldar, haunted by memory, are both prisoners and masters of myth. Their stories are warnings, but also hopes. The Harlequins dance the old tales, the Inari seek a new future, and every craftworld carries the scars of the past. The myth of extinction is powerful, but it is not destiny. The future is unwritten, and those who dare to challenge the old ways may yet find a new path. Orcs, in their chaotic wisdom, are the ultimate survivors. Their myths are not burdens, but engines of creation. Every story is true, if enough Orcs believe it. The Wa is both legend and reality, a force that shapes the fate of worlds. For the Orcs, the line between myth and truth is not just blurred, it is irrelevant. The Adeptus Mechanicus, for all their reverence for the past, are also creators of myth. Every new discovery, every recovered STC, every innovation is woven into the tapestry of the machine god. The myth of the unchanging order is a comfort, but it is also a lie. The Mechanicus survives because it adapts, because it finds new ways to keep the machines running, even as the old knowledge fades. The Necrons, awakening to a galaxy that has forgotten their true story, are forced to confront the power of myth. The legends of the Silent King, the betrayal of the Citan, the promise of immortality, these are not just memories, but chains. Yet, as the dynasties rise and fall, new stories are written, new myths are born. The Necrons are not just prisoners of the past, they are authors of the future. The Tau, for all their optimism, are learning the dangers of myth. The greater good is a powerful idea, but it is also a tool of control. As the empire expands, as new challenges arise, the myth must adapt or die. Among the Tau, there are those who question, who doubt, who seek a new path. The myth endures, but it is always changing. In the end, the galaxy is a tapestry of stories, some true, some false, all powerful. The myths we believe shape the world we live in, for better or worse. To question is not to betray, but to seek understanding. To doubt is not to despair, but to hope for something better. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, but there is also the possibility of change, of growth, of new myths yet to be written, and so we arrive at the heart of the matter. In Warhammer 40,000, myths are not just stories, they are survival. They are the armor that shields the mind from despair, the banners that rally armies, the prayers that echo in the darkness between the stars. Every myth, whether born of hope or fear, is a tool wielded by those who understand its power. The Ecclesiarchy uses myth to bind the Imperium together, the Inquisition to root out dissent, the Mechanicus to preserve what little knowledge remains. Even the Orcs, in their wild, anarchic way, use myth to shape reality itself. But the greatest strength of myth is also its greatest weakness. It can be changed. It can be challenged, rewritten, or even destroyed. The galaxy is full of those who dare to ask, what if? What if the Emperor is not a god, but a man? What if the Space Marines are not invincible, but mortal? What if the Imperium is not doomed, but simply changing? These questions are dangerous, but they are also necessary. They are the seeds of revolution, the sparks of hope, the beginnings of new stories. For every myth that endures, there is a truth waiting to be discovered. Sometimes, the truth is darker than the legend, a reminder that the universe is not a place of easy answers or happy endings. Sometimes, the truth is brighter, a glimpse of possibility, of change, of something better. The challenge is to see beyond the myth, to question, to doubt, to seek. In doing so, we honor not just the stories of the past, but the potential of the future. So the next time you hear a tale of the Emperor's miracles, or the invincibility of the Space Marines, or the inevitable doom of the Imperium, remember, every myth is a choice. We choose what to believe, what to remember, what to pass on. In the end, the power of myth is not in the story itself, but in the hearts and minds of those who carry it forward. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war, but there is also hope, if you know where to look. The myths we believe can bind us, but they can also set us free. The truth is out there, waiting to be found, waiting to be told, waiting to become the next great story in the endless saga of Warhammer 40,000. And perhaps, just perhaps, the greatest myth of all is that we are powerless to change the story. In every legend, in every battle, in every whispered prayer, there is the possibility of something new. The galaxy is vast, the night is long, but the light of hope endures, flickering, fragile, but never truly extinguished. So keep questioning, keep doubting, keep seeking, for in the end, it is not the myths we inherit that define us, but the truths we dare to discover.